There has been a lot of recent hype about electronic or e-cigarettes. Are they really a safe alternative to regular cigarettes?
A doctor who specializes in pulmonary medicine will weigh in on this important topic today on Health Talk.
So stay tuned, we're up next. Hello, I'm Dr. Eric Mazer.
And I'm Dr. Andrea Peterson. Our guest today is Dr. Robyn Scatena. She's a specialist in pulmonary and critical care medicine at Norwalk Hospital. And today we'd like to talk about e-cigarettes. Are they really a safe alternative to smoking tobacco?
Robyn, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
I'm fascinated with this topic. It's all over the newspapers, and I just read an article in the ACP Throwaway, one of our doctor journals. But well, maybe we should say, what are e-cigarettes? Let's describe it for the audience so everybody's on the same page, and then we can go from there.
Sure. So e-cigarettes are a device that uses a heat coil to vaporize a liquid into an aerosol that you can inhale, and that's it. And you can put anything into it, or a company can, maybe you can't. And most of the time people inhale nicotine containing solutions, but not always. And there's other chemicals that are in what you inhale
So
as well.
you get the experience of inhaling something, a vapor, not a smoke. You can have nicotine in it, so you can actually be addicted. You have the habit, you satisfy the habit.
It's something in your hand.
Something in your hand, something you can put to your mouth rather than food.
And they were developed, I believe, in an attempt to have something that was safer than regular cigarettes.
That's a good question. I don't know if they were developed, maybe the cynic in me says they were developed just to have something to sell that are not cigarettes, but I think they were built to be just like cigarettes in a different way.
And this has expanded too. There are vape shops that are around where you can get all sorts of stuff to put in your electronic cigarette. I guess, I don't even know what chemicals they sell in those. But tell us, I guess one of the things that the proponents could argue is that cigarette smoke has hundreds of different carcinogens and substances, and you're being exposed to them in an uncontrolled way. And here with these vapor electronic cigarettes, you can just get nicotine in a pure form and not get all those other things.
So
why aren't they good?
So that's not true. The nicotine has to be suspended in something, and it's suspended in propellants, chemicals like formaldehyde, acetone, that are vaporized and then inhaled into the lungs. And some of those chemicals are known to be carcinogens.
Cancer causing.
Right, to cause cancer. Though there's really not enough data in any way about e-cigarettes to know what they actually do to people when they use them.
So we really, at this point, the data is still out as to.
Yeah, I think we've had the unfortunate benefit of watching people get sick from smoking cigarettes for decades, and we just haven't had that time to watch people use e-cigarettes and see what happens to them. We can extrapolate from what we know about cigarettes. Some of the chemicals are similar. So some of the studies suggest that the cancer-causing agents in e-cigarettes tend to be in lower concentrations than they are compared with traditional cigarettes. But we don't really know how people are going to use them and how often they're going to use them and how that's going to play out over a lifetime of use.
I think that's really important because I think we've seen in other realms that sometimes when people think they have a safer alternative, they may use that safer alternative in unsafe ways. So sometimes people who drive very big SUVs drive less safely because they think that the vehicle will protect them.
Yeah.
Are we seeing any of that with e-cigarettes, that people think they're safer and so are using them unsafely?
So maybe so. I think maybe one way to answer that question is that more young adults seem to be trying e-cigarettes, and people who wouldn't have smoked cigarettes seem to be using e-cigarettes and not smoking traditional cigarettes. So maybe there is a sense that it's safer, that it's not really smoking. And in some ways that might be a harm because, like you said, maybe e-cigarettes are a little bit safer than cigarettes, though the data is certainly out, but they're certainly not safer than not smoking at all.
Right. And I think that actually that's what I had read from this blurb in one of the American College of Physicians journals. But based on the chemical composition, you get some safety, but the best thing is not to smoke cigarettes at all, and we know that. And we know the improvement, so I certainly wouldn't be encouraging our children to smoke these e-cigarettes.
Right. And we have, it sounds like, no data on what the e-cigarettes may be doing in still developing bodies or still developing brains.
Right.
So people who are using them as young people, it may be having really untoward effects. We don't have all the data.
And you are satisfying an addiction. You're creating a nicotine addiction.
Yeah.
These are nicotine based. I think almost all of them are nicotine based, aren't they?
Almost all of them. There are some that just have flavors and no nicotine, and of course the propellants that you have to include to vaporize it. And I think, to your point, Andrea, the studies suggest that most people who use e-cigarettes don't just use e-cigarettes, they also smoke traditional cigarettes. And so
I was just going to bring that. Is it a gateway? Is this sort of a gateway drug, a way to get into cigarettes where you think it's an innocent vice and then suddenly you find yourself doing the real bad thing?
We don't know enough about it. Like I said, there's just not enough years of observation, but it does look like people use e-cigarettes who wouldn't smoke at all, but most people who use e-cigarettes go back and forth and use both products.
How about the flavors? The fact that they're flavored, did that give us an added attraction to children starting young?
Yeah, definitely, because there's sweetness that's added to it. There's even some that are cotton candy flavored that are really appealing to younger types of people. So I think there's an attempt perhaps to create a bigger market for the e-cigarettes. And the flavors themselves actually are more chemicals, right? So more things that could potentially be cancer causing when inhaled.
And you're delivering a hot vapor to your airway. I don't know what that would
Well,
have.
it's actually cooled on the way in.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, so the liquid is heated by a heating coil and then cooled into a vapor to inhale. So I don't think there's direct thermal injury. There's no burning of the airway, but there's direct application of chemicals to your lungs.
How about the tobacco companies? It'd be sort of interesting if we could infer anything about their view of this. Are they involved in the creation of these e-cigarettes? Do they support it? Do they oppose it?
That's a good question. I'm not really educated about the
I don't know either.
corporations behind e-cigarettes, but I know that some of the studies comparing e-cigarettes to traditional cigarettes have been funded by tobacco companies. So I think there's interest in, and I don't know much more about that.
One of the things I think people often don't know is that cigarette smoking, in addition to being associated with lung cancer, which people do know, is also associated with other cancers. Mm-hmm. Is there any evidence that what's inhaled in e-cigarettes may also be cancer causing in other parts of the body, either in the mouth, in the upper airways, even before we get to the lungs?
So no, not that I know of. We don't have any evidence that it does or doesn't cause the same cancers as cigarettes, and I think we can only extrapolate from what we know from the very good science about cigarette smoking. And I think I wouldn't say e-cigarettes are guilty until proven innocent, but I certainly would worry about the same exact diseases.
Let me ask from a different perspective. Can e-cigarettes be useful in getting somebody to stop smoking? Are they a way to get to that zero? Is there a role for them in medical therapy of smoking?
So I think there's certainly a role for e-cigarettes in quitting smoking, because people are doing that. In the community, people are employing e-cigarettes in an attempt to quit smoking. There's no way for prescribers to provide e-cigarettes to their patients, but there's studies suggesting that people who want to quit smoking are trying to use e-cigarettes, and that in some cases, people who use e-cigarettes in an attempt to quit smoking may be more successful in those attempts. There's been no high-quality studies, though, comparing e-cigarettes to some of the other tools that we know really are helpful for smoking cessation and tools that doctors can prescribe to their patients, like nicotine patches, like pills to help reduce the cravings for smoking. So I think we know a little bit. We know that the e-cigarettes are being used, but we don't really know how to compare them to the other techniques that we have.
Well, we know what age groups are. I mean, is this, again, thinking in terms of e-cigarettes being a gateway, or seeing younger kids use these? Because is there any, I know so little about this, is there legal control over e-cigarettes? Can anybody buy them?
So I think you do have to be 18 because they're nicotine containing for the most part, but that doesn't mean that younger people can't gain access to them. And yeah, the studies of younger people's usage of e-cigarettes and traditional cigarettes suggest that more younger people are using e-cigarettes.
Yeah, I was concerned when I heard about the vape shops, and it sounds almost part of a very young culture that is attractive.
Yeah, and it's marketed in a really cool way, and so it's a tough thing for, I think, for our kids to have to deal with, right? Yet another challenge. So.
Well, what would you recommend? How would parents deal with this? Just simply abstinence?
Wow. I don't yet know how to parent anybody older than 5, so I don't have any great recommendations for parents, but I think I would kind of put it into the same category, into things that could be dangerous for their kids to use.
Well, and certainly talking to kids about the fact that they have substances that we think are unsafe in them, to dispel ideas that kids may have that it's pure nicotine, there's nothing else in there. Really, giving especially teens the facts, I think really often helps them make better decisions and to have open conversations so that they're getting information not just from their friends or from the internet necessarily, but having conversations with trusted adults.
And it's creating a real addiction. The decision to use e-cigarettes says, hey, I want to go out and get addicted to nicotine. And why would anybody do that? Why would you voluntarily do that?
I don't know. I mean, people have been doing it for a long time. We have been having successes with smoking rates in the U.S., and that's been really good, but I think this is a new challenge for us to educate people, like you said.
Are there any things out there that can substitute for smoking? I guess one of my concerns is that as we stop smoking effectively, we get obese. I'm talking as a society. People have always talked about, especially women talk about smoking so that they don't eat. But I think a lot of people are using that. Are there other things? What should we be doing? I guess what we hear already, we should be doing exercise and all those things.
Yeah.
That's a bad question. I'm sorry, but it's so prevalent in our society.
And I think for every person, it's different. I think, if somebody always has a cigarette when they step outside to talk on the phone, perhaps grabbing, something that they want to snack on, a healthy snack, if they want to have, a non-alcoholic beverage instead, maybe just some sort of substitute to maintain the sense of a routine, but maybe a healthier routine.
And I don't have a good sense of this, but we've often thought about how cigarettes have been portrayed in the media and whether and in popular culture, in movies and television, and how that may influence people's behaviors and maybe being on the lookout for how e-cigarettes are being portrayed as well.
Definitely.
I worry a lot about that. And marijuana, they could even say something about marijuana smoke, which, again, everybody, it's so much better than cigarette smoke. At least that was in my generation. That's what we were all told. I don't even think that that's true, is it?
No, it's not. We have more and more data that whatever you burn and inhale affects your lungs. And
so you don't want to inhale stuff other than nice, clean air.
Exactly. And the same can be said of air pollution.
So that's a good message. Keep your lungs clean. If only people could see. We see it during our early medical school. When you do an autopsy or on your cadaver and you see somebody who smoked, you see that black carbon. The lungs literally come out black rather than pink. And it's just sort of striking. If people knew that that's what they were doing to themselves, I think they'd stay away from it.
I hope so.
Thank you so much. That's all we have time for today.
We'll have to bring you back in a few years to talk more about e-cigarettes.
Okay.
Hopefully they go away. I want to thank our guest today, Dr. Robyn Scatena, for joining us on Health Talk and talking about a difficult and very current topic.
If you have questions or comments about Health Talk, please do send them to us at healthtalk@wchn.org.
Thanks so much for joining Andrea, me, and Robyn today.
Be well.